Your centers are ready to go. You've got all your supplies, all of the digital and printable centers you will need. You've even got a framework in place, and you are ready to totally rock your math and literacy centers. But now, meeting with your students has got you worried because you're not quite sure how to group your students for maximum effect. Tonight, we are going to dive into how you can group your students so that you can get the maximum impact and all your hard work is going to be worth it. Stay tuned. What's up, educational rock stars? Welcome back. I'm Farah from Farah Henley Education, where I strive to bring you actionable tips, strategies, and simple systems that actually work to take back into your classroom to make your teacher life easier and get the biggest impact on your students' learning. If you're new here, be sure and hit like and subscribe and click that bell so that you get notified when I go live or upload a new video here on the channel. After the video, we would love it if you would click one of the links in the description and join either our K2 or 3-5 teacher community, because we know that the best professional development is often the teacher next door. Now, when you're grouping students for your math and literacy centers, there are two ways that you can group your students. You can group them heterogeneously or homogeneously. Now, if you group them heterogeneously, you are going to be grouping, making your center groups based off different levels. And this is often seen in classrooms where teachers are running centers and they are randomly pulling students up to their table while centers are running. Now, this can be done. I personally did not like doing this during my math and literacy centers, just simply because I wanted to meet with all of my students every single day. But if you have a situation in your classroom where you've got some students that are above grade level and you don't need to meet with them every single day, and meeting with them a couple of times a week would be fine, then heterogeneous grouping would be great. And I used it when I was teaching my 4th and 5th graders, because I was doing more novel study type things, and I would pull them in smaller groups, and it was kind of random as far as that. But with the lower levels, I like the next way of grouping your students, which is homogeneously. Now, when you are grouping them homogeneously, you are going to be grouping them based off of their level most of the time, or a specific skill that everyone in the group needs to work on. This would look like grouping all of your level 1 readers and level 2 readers and level 3 readers together. So one of these two ways is what you're going to choose when you're grouping your students, and which one of those you choose is going to be based on what is best for your current classroom makeup. You're going to want to start with 3 groups. You're going to want to start with a group that is below level, a group that is on level, and a group that is above level. Now, again, I prefer homogeneous grouping. So when you group with the below level, the on level, and above level, you're going to find that those groups are going to be different sizes. Some you may have a lot in your below level, a few in your on level, and you may have only a few, even less, in your above level. So when you are breaking these groups down, even though you're going to start with those 3 groups, you're going to move on from those 3 groups and continue breaking them down until you have the number of groups that you need. I typically like to have anywhere from 5 to 6 groups, regardless of whether I'm teaching math or literacy and doing small group instruction. So I typically like to have anywhere from 5 to 6 groups. So if I have my below level group, the top of my below level group with the bottom of my on level group would be put together to make a group. And then the top of my on level group with the bottom of my above level group would come together to make a group. And then I would have the ends, which my below level group and my above level group for the ends, to make 5 groups. When you are putting those groups together, you are going to want to pay attention to students who might not get along with each other. For example, even though I start with my below level, my on level, and my above level, and then I create the other 2 groups from the top and bottoms of those, I'm going to want to make sure that I'm not putting students that aren't going to work well together. Now, I say that with this caveat. One of the benefits to using math and literacy centers is that you are teaching your students to learn some of those person skills, those personable skills, and learning how to communicate and work with others. So I challenge you to, even if you think they can't work well together, I challenge you at some point to try putting them together and see if they can get along. Now, this may not work and you may need to move them, but that is why you're grouping them the way you are so that you can very easily move somebody down or move somebody up if you need to. I typically like to keep my groups between 4 and 6 students. I really don't like going over that number of students. The next tip that I want to share with you is make sure you're keeping it consistent. Like I said, you might want to switch to heterogeneous on the occasional opportunity. For example, when you're doing some test prep on, an upcoming test. But if you decide to go with homogeneous at the beginning of the year, stick with homogeneous. And the reason is it's going to make your teacher life easier and your students are going to get into that routine. And you guys know I am all about routine. Now, if you decide that you are going to switch it up, which is kind of the next thing I'm going to talk about, if you want to switch it up, then switch it up at a specific interval during the year. For example, I never really switched from heterogeneous to homogeneous, but my groups were always fluid and they should be. Yours should be too. I always made sure that as students progressed, if they needed to move up, they could move up. And sometimes I even had students that needed to move down, and that's okay too. By keeping your groups fluid and making sure you can move your students from group to group as they progress through their learning, this is going to keep your groups fresh and your students are going to get the opportunity to practice those people skills with more than just one group of students. Make sure you do this at a specific interval. Whenever I changed my groups, it was typically around the time we were doing our reading tests or our literacy tests. Maybe I was doing running records. We got to the end of a unit and I was doing a check for understanding. Make sure you pick a time that a specific time in the year is when you are going to maybe regroup your students. This gives your students that consistency they need within your math and literacy center so that they get used to the people they're working with, they get used to the work, the framework, and they get used to the rotations without too much switching up. One of the biggest issues I see when I go in and observe teachers using math and literacy centers is they decide every day who they're going to work with, and the students have to relearn their partner, they have to relearn the group that they're working with, and maybe students get together that don't work well together, and it's a daily, it's up in the air. So teachers aren't sure every day how centers are going to run because they're not sure how their groups are going to mesh together, and everybody's having to relearn somebody new in the group. So this is why I suggest that once you pick a system and once you pick one of the other, heterogeneous or homogeneous, and you form your groups, make sure that you stick with those groups for a certain amount of time and give the students a chance to mesh and really get the program down. So my next tip is assigning group roles. Now, this is going to be similar to what you're using in your classroom, or you may be using in your classroom for student jobs. Assign your jobs inside your center groups. So inside your group of say 4 to 6 students, give one student the responsibility of being the setup person. They're the one that's going to set the center up. Make sure everybody has an exit sheet if the center has an exit sheet, and they're going to get everybody ready to go when they get to the center. They're responsible for going to get the center box, taking it wherever they're going to be working. That is their job. What is this going to eliminate? Well, especially with those younger students, it's going to eliminate wasted time with them fighting over who is in charge of setting everything up. The next thing that I would say that you need to give a job for is someone who's a cleanup person. So after everything is done, that one person who is responsible for making sure all the supplies get back into the box. The other thing that you could have somebody responsible for is making sure that if a pencil broke inside the center while they were at it, that maybe that gets put back during rotation, that gets put into the cup to be sharpened, or it gets switched out if you have a pencil station. So there are so many jobs that you could have within your center groups, but by giving everybody a specific job, it makes sure that your centers are running like clockwork and nobody's confused as to what they should be doing when it's it's time to go to that center group. Grouping your students can be just absolutely frustrating sometimes. But if you have a system in place, you are going to get the biggest impact from your groups. Make sure you choose either heterogeneous or homogeneous. My favorite is homogeneous, and make sure that you stick with it for a certain amount of time and don't switch your groups up too much. Give your students a chance to work with each other, give them a chance to get in the groove, and you are going to see your math and literacy centers run like clockwork. Now, if you're looking for more tips, strategies, and simple systems to take back into your classroom that actually work to make your teacher life a little easier and have the biggest impact on your students, check out the videos on your screen. Thanks for watching, and keep being an educational rock star.